everybody. How are y'all? Awesome. I am super excited to be here with all of you and all of you lovely people. So that's very exciting. I'm Raina Nielsen. I'm gonna intro myself because I can do that. That's literally one of my jobs. I am a career bookseller and I'm an event specialist at Blue Cypress Books. I did write a poetry book like way back, don't look it up. And I've been working on the second one forever. I have so many pieces and I'm excited over the last year to have been doing more and more of these events and getting all this motivation from people like these guys here to maybe put that book together. So I want to welcome all y'all to New Orleans in Common. We're going to hear some reading from all of these wonderful authors, and I'm going to start with the intros. So I'll start down there on that end with Karin Cecile Davidson. She is the author of the story collection, The Geography of First Kisses, which is the winner of the 2022 Acacia Fiction Prize, and the novel Sibelia Drive. Her stories have appeared in 5 Points, Story Magazine, the Los Angeles Review, and elsewhere. Her awards include an Ohio Arts Council Individual Excellence Award, the Orlando Prize for Short Fiction, a Peter Taylor Fellowship, and residencies at the Fine Arts Work Center, the Atlantic Center for the Arts, and the Studio of Key West. She's originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, and she now lives in Columbus, Ohio. Yay, welcome, Karen. T. Clark is a fiction writer whose work has appeared in Kenyon Review, The Offing, American Short Fiction, and elsewhere. They live, edit, and teach right here in New Orleans. Carolyn Hembree is the author of Skinny and Rigging a Chevy into a Time Machine and Other Ways to Escape a Plague, winner of the Trio Award and the Rochelle Ratner Memorial Award. Her third collection for today is forthcoming from LSU Press. Her poems appear in Beloit Poetry Journal, Copper Nickel, Poetry Daily, the Southern Review, and other publications. She teaches at the University of New Orleans and serves as the poetry editor of Bayou Magazine. Yay. Ariel Francisco is the author of the forthcoming All the Places We Love Have Been Left in Ruins. He's also the author of Under Capitalism, If Your Head Aches, They Just Yank Off Your Head. He has the best book titles. I'm sorry, y'all. He has the best book titles. And A Sinking Ship Is Still a Ship. He's also the translator of Haitian-Dominican poet Jacques Vieux-Renaud's Poet of One Island and Guatemalan poet Jael Lopez's Routines, Goodbyes. Also, you can hear more about his translation work tomorrow on the Translation in Life and Literature panel, so look that up. He is a poet and translator born in the Bronx to Dominican and Guatemalan parents and raised in Miami. His work has been published in The New Yorker, Poetry Magazine, the New York City Ballet, Latino Book Review, and elsewhere. He is the Assistant Professor of Poetry and Hispanic Studies at Louisiana State University. And finally, Brad Richard's 5th full-length collection, Turned Earth, is forthcoming from LSU Press in spring of 2025. Mark your calendars now. His other publications include Parasite Kingdom, winner of the 10th Gate Prize, and the chapbook In Place, winner of the 2021 Robin Becker Series Prize. He's on it. He has taught creative writing at the New Orleans Center for Creative Arts and the Willow School, whose creative writing program he founded and directed. I just learned that. Louisiana State University and Tulane University. He currently teaches for New Orleans Writers Workshop and the Kenyon Review Writers Workshop for Teachers, and he serves as series editor for Hilary Tong's Capital Collection From the World Works. He lives, writes, and gardens here in New Orleans. So now we're going to get to hear a little bit from each of these authors. Do you want to go backwards? Do you want to start over here? Brad? Who wants to start over here? Go, Brad, go.
All the people who don't want to go first. Can you hear me all right? All right. I'm just going to read 3 pieces. 2 of them are kind of long, and one is very short. So I'm going to read the final poem I'm going to start with the final poem from my book, Parasite Kingdom. My elevator pitch for this used to be something like, so these poems are set in an imaginary kingdom whose king is a tyrant, whose nemesis is a gigantic blue wasp who lives in a burrow underneath the palace. It's about war, it's about borders, it's about cruelty. And the final poem is called Homecoming. So there has been a war. The terms of the war have been extremely unclear to everyone. And now this couple is hoping to go back. Homecoming. 1. Finally, the war was over and we could go home, but my wife was wary. Those houses, she said, watching the news, those stores, schools, police, fake. Don't believe what you see. Childhood, wasps twitching on honey cakes, and our game with the clay balls, hiding them under the house. What was it called? I phoned my brother. He couldn't remember. He wasn't going back. You hear, it's hell. They're starving. Then such progress. It's amazing. Who cares anymore? Let me be unhappy where I am. A neighbor who'd helped us when we immigrated flew back to check on family property. Weeks later, I saw her in the shade on her porch, drinking tea. How was it? How long should we wait? Her skin had darkened, not tanned, more like it came from inside. Wait a year, 5, 10. By then, who knows? Maybe everywhere will be like that. 2. Everything looked too new. Ruins all raised and dumped, a palace, a museum and shops, the square, a civic theater. The supermarket was like a supermarket, but the food tasted like imitations of food we knew. The library gates were locked. Under renovation, opening soon. Of course, our old house was gone. Our new one was fine. Familiar, like the groceries. The power went out and we had no water for hours, sometimes all day. It's just how things are here, said our new neighbors. We tried making friends, but their chatter and ours sounded like a script. We watched a lot of TV. Scientists urged us to be vigilant about eradicating invasive species. 3. Call your brother and ask him to send some real toothpaste. My wife spat in the sink, cupped her hand under the faucet, caught the thin, cloudy stream. My brother didn't answer. No message. Toothpaste. I just couldn't say it. That night at the Civic Theater, we saw a folk play. No story, just symbols. An iron eagle with a red tongue, iron bars for feathers, wingtips curled into blunt iron fists, and phrases sung by a children's chorus. Wings of peace, bird of hope. When we came home, the street was dark. My wife found her flashlight and led the way. Oh my God, she said. The beam lit a heap of dark husks like a mound on the seat of my reading chair. Wasps, I said. They must have nested in the walls. I wonder what killed them. My wife was grabbing garbage bags and handed me the broom. More mounds on the dining table, on the laundry basket, on the bathroom scale, in our bed. She held the flashlight, I swept the bodies. In the morning, bags were heaped in front of every house on the block. 4. Now the power and water have stopped for good. We left coffee cans in the yard, hoping to catch rain. One day, packs of batteries and cases of bottled water showed up. My wife twisted us off a cap, sipped. Fake, even the water. At night, people come out to scavenge. We hear them rustling in our garden. Days, my wife shuts the door to her room, stays there reading the same book she brought with her. Well, I've been working in the basement ever since I dropped a wrench on the concrete floor and heard under the clang a muffled echo. I took a mallet, tapped lightly, heard it again, a buried breath. I heaved the mallet, cracked the slab, pried chunks away, and found the burrow someone had started, the shovel they'd left. It feels good, digging, aiming into the dark, feeling it resist, breaking it down, shoulders sore, back sore. It feels like it means something, this rhythm of blade into dirt calling, come home, come home, you're almost there. And I'm going to be brave and read something pretty much brand new. I shared it with Karin over coffee earlier. And this is what I envision as the first piece to the sequel to Parasite Kingdom, which is called Parasite Pilgrim. So I can tell you a tiny bit. So in Parasite Pilgrim, I'm imagining the world as an enormous landfill. And the ocean is no longer water. It is the effluent from the landfill. And there will be a pilgrim who wakes up and has to confront this world. But this piece is a little proem that will be before the rest. And it's in prose. It's called The Future. That late summer afternoon, the present lay curled up on a daybed on the screened-in porch just off its bedroom. Musty cushions made the present's head stuffy, deepened its drowse. Dappled light through the big tree's branches, elm, sycamore, leaves starting to turn, flickered on the screen. I haven't been out here in ages, thought the present, smiling, letting its eyes shut. I have lived so much in, well, the present. I didn't realize how tired I was, that I needed a rest, much less that the world had made a place for me here to lie down. And didn't I make my world? Yes. Therefore perfect, like every moment's purchase of my wild and precious life. Free shipping, we make it easy to love yourself. Ought to tidy up out here. Where did that pile of magazines come from? Those newspapers and chicken bones, that heap of smashed beer cans, that pile of popsicle sticks and corroded batteries, that axe, all those panties, that propane tank, that thing in that basket that was a plant once, or maybe a creature. Didn't I have a pet? I'll have to clean these cushions too. One day, makes me think of Mom. Funny, I haven't thought about her in years. Getting chilly. Should have brought a blanket. A little hole as big around as a child's finger opened, who knows when, in the screen, just behind the present's now gently snoring head. The past in the form of a slender, glossy blue wasp, alit on the screen. Eyes and antennae found the hole, wings folded close to abdomen, and she slipped through, flew to the present's face, slid stinger into soft, flushed cheek. A relief to release all that venom into warm flesh where it belonged. Nerves hushed, muscles fixed, rigid as it napped, the present felt nothing, dreamed nothing, lost to itself. Stinger, now ovipositor, now probed the plump cushion of cheek meat, squeezed an egg into a vein. Find the brain, little one. There you go. Goodbye. I'll never be back. You'll be fine. She slipped back into a beautiful day's end. Behind eyelids stuck shut, egg hatched. Larva fed on host brains poured. Stray trash like the stuff on the porch, equations, promises, lies, stale prophecies. Then it ate something called mother. Mother, it asked. Mother? We close with a short poem that'll be sort of a palate cleanser after all that scary stuff. This is a little poem called Zinnias. There's never enough time to see everything in the museums we visit most often. I planted 10 packets of seeds, and only these sprouted, grew 5 feet high, and blew face down in last night's storm. Watching my husband chop an onion, I think of all the poets no one reads. Rooted in air, rooted in smoke, washed away in silk-bearing floods. Don't worry, it's firm, I call out to my 4-year-old godson as my right leg sinks to the knee in the mound of dirt I'm climbing. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Ariel, you want to read?
Okay, can you guys hear me? All right, it's like right as hell. So I'm just gonna read 5 poems for you guys, some new stuff as well. This first one is the most recent thing I've written, and the title comes from a news headline, an article. So this is called, "After Reading That Scientists Want to Use AI to Decipher Whale Language." What good will it do to transcribe the lyrics of their music, their mournful earth elegies, upload it to Spotify and deliver them their residuals of penny fractions? Anything can be monetized, even the whales of whales. So many human voices go unheard, muted, buried in rubble, drowned in drowning. Artificial intelligence, artificial empathy. When the whales start a climate change podcast, science will pull the plug. And this next one is really an elegy for one of my favorite bars. I grew up in Miami, and there was a place called Churchill's, which was a very famous kind of punk venue, and it closed during the pandemic, and it hasn't reopened, and somebody very cruelly pulled a prank. They put a Chili's opening soon sign, which is devastating. Fortunately, it wasn't true, but it still hasn't opened, so this is just kind of an elegy for my youth and for one of my favorite spots. It's called Even Churchill's is Closing. Let me see. Yes, named after a war criminal. Yes, his ugly mug adorned the entryway, but still we defied his baby-faced scowl with our dancing, our sweat misting the air, someone circling and stomping until they were vomiting in the bathroom that looked like it was cleaned maybe once every presidential term, re-elections not included, watching the Jacuzzi Boys or Radio Boxer or some other flicker of light that carried us through yet another night of rum and cokes and the cheapest beer imaginable, keeping the rest of the world at bay by singing at the top of our young lungs until our voices ghosted us and our limbs bobbled like jello shots as we staggered into the incoherent darkness, bracing itself to be smothered by dawn, as we staggered out like wounded soldiers, arms around shoulders, holding each other up, in the gravel that passes for a parking lot, where the man in his reflective vest, who we paid $5 to watch our car from potential thieves, including him, salutes us with a smile, bright as the rising sun. Thank you. This next one, this comes from, I don't know if y'all did this here in Louisiana, possibly, but me and my brother, we grew up in Florida, and we used to catch those little anoles, those little lizards, and they get very upset when you catch them, and they kind of bare their little teeth at you, and they'll clamp down on anything. And so we used to hold them up to our ears and our lips, and they would like bite down, and we'd kind of walk around the neighborhood, looking like little lunatics with lizards hanging off our faces. Sorry, I don't know why the microphone keeps scraping down. So this is called Young Lizard Kings.
Can I just fix that for a second?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Frustrating. Just fix that.
Do whatever.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
All right, we're back. Right, so Young Lizard Kings. Under the Florida sun's stern gaze, parents too busy fighting to watch us in the yard. My brother and I hunt for lizards in the loquat trees, brimming with many suns, chase them skittering across the porch or through the tall grass. If you pinch their tail, it snaps off and they shoot into the foliage like bottle rockets. You have to grab them by the middle with thumb and forefinger like a cigarette, their little mouths open in rage or fear, baring tiny, harmless teeth at us. We raise them as though offering them to the sun before offering them our earlobes and lower lip, letting them clamp down in rage or fear, and wear them as living jewelry, breathing green gems clinging to our skulls. We roam the neighborhood like this, little deformed Mayan deities, young lizard kings, our providence adorning our faces, seeking to remake this world. Thank you. This is another short one. I was reading another poet named Martina Spada, and he had some metaphor about Evel Knievel, and that was a name I hadn't heard in a very long time. And it conjured this memory, which I could have swore I saw Evel Knievel try to jump over the Grand Canyon as a kid. And so I started to look it up because I was like, that can't be, it would have been too old. But it was his son who did it. And so it wasn't like a fever dream, it was something that I actually saw. So this is called Watching Robbie Knievel Jump the Grand Canyon, 1999. And it is worth noting that it is a stunt that Evel Knievel did want to do, but he never got to do it. My mom's first birthday post-divorce, duplex in the sidewalkless outskirts of Orlando, one TV for the four of us, one bathroom for the four of us, two bedrooms for the four of us. The frogs who made a home of the window AC cheered the daredevil on. You can make a home anywhere, I guess. We watched Robbie Knievel rev his motorcycle to achieve what his father could not, a second-generation dream dressed all in white. We watch as he angels through the air, an inverse Icarus for a few seconds of flight, but a crash landing is still a landing, and a home is a home is a home. Thank you. And this is the last one, so thank you again for having me up there. This is actually the first poem I wrote about Louisiana. I moved here in the summer of 2021. I started off in Baton Rouge, but now I'm in New Orleans. And it's very strange because I grew up being very ambivalent about living in Florida just because I lived there so long and it is a very bizarre place and I wanted to leave it very badly. And so I was in New York, and then when I came to Louisiana, it reminds me so much of Florida. And so I started to miss Florida, which is something I never thought I would feel. So this poem makes reference to the movie Scarface, and also to a guy named Charles Morton who thought birds flew to the moon for winter. I think he was some kind of semi-scientist in like the 1800s, I don't quite remember. But this is called Baton Rouge. Winter's revelation is always the same, longing. A flamingo flies overhead, a pink axe cutting through the sky. I think of Tony Montana alone in his hot tub, his world and everything in it on the cusp of collapse, watching a nature documentary, seeing the flamingos taking flight and yelling, "Fly, pelican." I think of Florida, I think of home. The haters will say the bird you see is simply a spoonbill, but they're just trying to bring you down, man. I think of only seeing flamingos on lottery billboards, a good omen. I think of how Baton Rouge was once a part of West Florida. I think of how nothing escapes the swamp's reclamation. I think of Charles Morton, who thought birds flew to the moon for winter. We all have moons we long to return to. I watch the flamingos. I watch until it fades into the pink of sunset, until it becomes what is missing. Thank you.
I'm gonna grab this real quick, just so I didn't time myself. I didn't time myself, and I'm pretty uptight, so I'm just gonna set a little timer so I don't hog more time than I should. I'm gonna read from a long poem, the title piece of my forthcoming collection, and title for today. And the long poem takes place on a single spring day, somewhere sort of around here and somewhere kind of around now, with the speaker dropping her child at the school bus stop and then meandering her neighborhood. And I chose this particular excerpt to read for Raina. and she'll know why, our wonderful moderator for today. This spring morning, any spring morning, school bus idling at the stop. I pull a comb from my house dress pocket. Too late. Pneumatic doors shut. I think to catch kiddo's hand. Gone. Then her eye. Too late. Her face in the bus window. How long until a river swollen with spring floods tears through land? Riverboat horn. Streetcar bell, more horns, dogs, rooster. Too late. Each strike from the bell tower dilates to contain us. The ape quivers and thins. Good look, Mama. I turn toward the message received by, yet not meant for me. Girls on pastel bike seats pass, one stretching her gum into a jump rope to swing between fingers and mouth. Clouds, wider than 4 fingers at arm's length, about to rain. And morning will soften like a nose of day-old French bread soaked in broth. I pass the bakery. I remember free bread tastings with butter and jam before we were sick, all of us, almost. Plague sick, fever sick, sick. Will bread tastings come back? I pass storefronts with living quarters above, beauty shop, pawn shop, body shop, too early to open. I pass the corner bar, someone asleep under the awning, ear to sky, as if waiting for a call. The seafood store, boiled crawfish, $3.29 a pound, amid red shell heaps and absconder snacks. Skulls, riverward. I pass the cobblers, dressmakers, jewelers. Oh, lines of credit. I've run up and down the street. I pass sandbags in every doorway, in every attic, and axe. I suppose sandbags. Axes exist here. For sale sign at the diner. Oh, the cook who gives out water red beans when our power blows. Long blocks and short blocks. Long thoughts and short thoughts. How far has her bus gone? To the fire station yet? What did they dream last night? Bus driver, firefighter, baker, mechanic, barback, cobbler, dressmaker, jeweler, cook? World at large, world at home. I stop at the milliner's window, my reflection overlapping a mannequin head. Not yet had it. Mental note, sun hat owed. Your woven straw, your sweatband suffused with musk, your fraying indigo gross grain ribbon, and hand's length brim to cast patterns, to catch drizzle, to wrap around ears for drafts, to pull down for shut-eye. You're blowing away, you're being caught. More hatted idola. Friend V in her baseball cap. Kiddo in my sun hat. My father in his ushanka. A loud sundress ahead in bare feet, gone the problem of shoes. Rainbow painted water meter, t-shirt. Strange things happen below sea level. Sun hat moseying any morning, him fluttering at my knees. What part do I play today? Change for a cold drink? Yes. I pass the bank turned coffee house. How do you want it today? Wide, sloshing mugs, faces hung in brimming dark. Long blocks, short blocks. Listen. Seagulls in the convenience store parking lot. Accordion on the corner, tip hat. Walking stick behind me. Ping! Check my pocket. Damn. Forgot my phone, too early to call V. Open and close the clip-on earring in my pocket, V's favorite, scallop shell. Found in the rocker cushion after I put kiddo to bed. Here, my favorite bookstore. Cat goes in, cat goes out, rinse, repeat, sign. Periscope tail amid the stacks. I stop to read a pamphlet open in the window. Boil water and pour over parsley. Steep 30 minutes. Drink for up to 7 days. Discontinue if negative side effects are experienced. Got to be my own doctor now, said the woman on the streetcar. A flock of wild parrots flies over, unhurried, loose, low, like a green scarf carried by wind. I'll stop there, thank you.
I too will be using this to time myself, which I did ahead of time, but it can never be too safe. Can you hear me okay? Is this good? Yeah? Okay, I'm going to be reading from something brand new because it takes place in New Orleans, and I knew we would be talking about that. I do want to say for sure it's definitely fiction, and this character's relationship to New Orleans is not as self-aware as mine is. So, there you go. This is called Gunk. It's an excerpt. There were plenty of things Danielle didn't want to forget. Second lines with Hina years ago when they dance and smoke and squat to pee in strange corners from too much Taka Red Bull. Road trips to Pensacola with Gigi on a little bit of mushrooms, brave enough to brace the empty ocean with her top off. Meeting Violet for the first time on Lundi Gras, and the inevitability of moving in together by April, queer and correct, the wedding, the baby turned kid turned teen. All those friendships made and maintained over Pelicans games and Bayou sunsets, pop-ups gone brick and mortar, gone shuttering, and those mainstays that dug their heels in when Airbnb and chain restaurants tried hard to ruin the city. And strangely, the hurricanes. She'd stayed in town for Ida at least, and after the damage and fear, she and fellow left behinders cooked over fires and shared food like some other world was possible. This is to say, if she'd been born at 25 and in New Orleans, she might not need therapy at all. But there was plenty she needed to forget, too. It's not exactly like forgetting, though, Marcus said. They'd stepped away from the cookout to catch up and smoked the pre-rolled joint he held in his shirt pocket. Marcus was the only friend Danielle had told about her plans to start the DMPT. She barely knew what it stood for. Something about detachment, maybe the M was memory. The T was definitely therapy, or was it trauma? Though she didn't know the exact details, she trusted Marcus for things like this. He was a high school counselor and had secretly done the therapy himself for 6 months and seemed honestly better. It's more like rewriting, he'd explained. He'd explained it to her a couple times. You take the pills twice a day and spend a week inpatient for monitoring and intensive therapy. The doctor puts you under hypnosis, and when you're under, you get into those hard memories and tweak them, make them livable. For Marcus, it was all about his father. He said, and now, whenever I see a tree, I don't think about him beating me with it. But you do remember him beating you then, Danielle thought. Sounds nothing like forgetting. She's 7, and her neighbors have a treehouse. She is allowed up there, but never alone, and never without adult supervision. When her boy cousins Joseph and Eric come over, they climb up and jump down till the cows come home. And when Danielle asks what makes her so different, her neighbor lights a cigarette. Just wait till you see how unfair it gets, she says. Well, I made my appointment, she told Marcus. It's for tomorrow. He nodded in approval. You gotta be patient, but I think you're gonna love it. The world is pretty different when you untangle it from all the bullshit. He passed her the joint. I'm proud of you, Dee. Feels like a long time coming. She didn't know how to respond to this, so they fell into familiar silence among the oaks. Her most recent coping method for when the memories came was to envision a television with static, blaring white noise. Just black, just fuzz, just shh. Sometimes it worked so well, she could tune out birds, car horns, her wife droning on about electoral politics. But eventually, the image would clear up, and she's the star of the show, staring out the window of her New York childhood home like a sad dog, wondering if her mom will show up. She does come home, unbothered, asking, "What's the big deal?" saying, "I was only gone for a second." "There's a trip coming up," Marcus said, blowing smoke, waking her. "It's this queer climate conference in Dallas. A bunch of our kids are petitioning the principal to fund it. Seems kind of legit." Danielle's heart tightened like a rope. It often did when she thought of her daughter. "Is Nads going?" Marcus nodded. "You mean Nadia. She's on the interest list. It's not for a couple months, though, and of course we need parental consent and permission slips and all that." "I haven't heard anything about this. Will there be chaperones?" "Of course there would be chaperones, you dumb idiot. There would be grown adults in hotel rooms sneaking off to downstairs bars, ill-equipped to supervise." Danielle drags the elevator down to the first floor of the Embassy Suites in Philadelphia. Hide and seek in the hotel. She's seeking Joseph, Eric, Patty, Lucy, China, but all she sees as the doors part open is a large white man in a security uniform. His voice is severe, like an icicle. "If I see one more of you kids running around, I'm locking you roaches in your rooms." "A few of the faculty are going, yeah. I'm going, obviously," Marcus said. "Ah," Daniel said. "Well, I'll talk to her." "You didn't hear it from me," Marcus said. "Where else would I have heard it from?" Marcus pulled the joint again and shrugged. "Small town?" He smiled with all his teeth. Heartbroken by a business school student, Danielle crawls into Marcus's empty bed during a party at his house. When he finds her in his room, people still raging in the yard, she asks him to spoon her through snot and her sobs into his pillow. Everyone knows Marcus is not opposed to platonic intimacy. He kisses friends of all genders and throws his arms around whoever ends up next to him zonked on the couch. But drunk in bed, as Danielle rolls her backside into his lap, he nudges her to face him and they kiss on the mouth. The kiss is bad, drunk, sloppy, and too vigorous to keep her liquor from swelling into her throat. That's all she has. Back by the crawfish-covered folding table, Danielle approached her wife from behind. Violet jumped at first, then leaned back into Danielle's arms. Violet inhaled dramatically. "Smells like you took a walk," she whispered. They turned toward each other. Violet's face morphed into their daughter's, and Danielle felt calm again. She loved them both, truly, had asked for this life in tarot cards and dreams and birthday candles. In Violet's ear, Danielle asked, Dad tell you anything about an overnight?" "What, like a sleepover?" "If I meant a sleepover, I would have said sleepover." She noticed a corn kernel on Violet's shirt and picked it off. "And it's Nadia," Violet whispered. "Remember, she's going by Nadia now." "Whatever, Nadia. It's like an overnight trip with the school." "I know nothing about this." I'll stop there. Thank you.
Hey y'all, can you hear me okay? I have a pretty soft voice. Thanks for being here. For some reason, we did poetry, fiction. But anyway, so we're ending with fiction, but something real is that my friend Brenda, who I knew in high school, so we were 16-year-olds together. There's some 16-year-olds in here. Her parents got married in this building when it was St. Anne's Church. So I thought that was pretty cool. I wanted to share it. And so something fiction is from my story collection that came out in April, The Geography of First Kisses, and I'm going to read from the title story, which has some first kisses and it has geography, so there's directional stuff. And here we go. Compass points. The first was Leon, a small, muscular boy, a midshipman at the academy. He knew about compasses, easterly winds, how to bring the boat about on white-capped seas. I went for his blonde hair and his deep voice, both like honeycomb, thick and golden and crowded, the waxen chambers, the echo in my chest. Summer grew brighter, and I refused to go back home to New Orleans, nearly 16, without that first kiss. Sweet 16 and never been. We never said it aloud, those of us who stayed in the corners at dances, at our own tables. All girls, all the time, not too shy, but not quite pretty enough. For the month of August, I was away from that southerly place where algebra notebooks got left behind and streetcars rumbled by, and boys sat on the cafeteria steps, and girls sat next to them. Sorry. And boys sat on the cafeteria steps smoking because they could get away with it, and girls sat by them, the kind of girl I wanted to be. In that northerly summer spot called Castine, where the great aunts played games of hearts and gin in the afternoon, where the berries were small and bright blue, where the beaches were covered with rocks and sea glass and broken pottery, the rules seemed different. I dared myself to walk near the academy and its giant ship, moored by the town's public dock. And when I did, the boys appeared. And then, even when I returned home, they kept appearing. Leon, with his bright curls, he had an arrow in his glance and shot me through the heart. My heart had room for so many more arrows, little did I know. Jeffrey, with his roaming hands, small, sweet hands that liked to untie things, apron strings, kerchiefs, the little gold clasp that held on my bikini top. His eyes were dark pieces of 8 that blinked hard, sizing me up and then down, putting me in my place. You baby, he'd say, reaching out to pinch me. Buzz, with a laugh that broke apart the stars, he liked to drink and do it in his car. He took me to drive-ins and ordered iced Cokes in paper cups that he laced with Jack. The smell of whiskey on his breath and his breath against my neck. The only film I remembered half seeing was Lipstick, Margot Hemingway looking down and me looking up through the strands of Buzz's long hair, the vinyl seat pressed against my bare back, the twist of double braid lashing round my ankles. North. On the beach of rocks and glass and powdery shards, Leon's hand in mine, I walked away from hair ribbons and shy smiles. He kissed me just around the bend from the gray house where the great aunts lived. I leaned against the splintering bulwark and felt his mouth on mine, warm and surprising, and closed my eyes. The weather was gray and coastal, like the great aunt's house. Like a cool hand on the back of your neck, but over Leon's shoulder when I opened my eyes again, the hills were blue and red, and I felt distracted. Robert Lowell had once lived in the house just above the bulwark, and I could feel his lingering presence in the crooked shutters and pale weathered shingles, all coming apart and tumbling down the hill like so much poetry. And then a seagull went for us, 2 blonde heads too close to her nest in the tall lilac spikes of the untended lupin. She drove us down the beach just in time to save us from the rising tide. Leon's letters arrived in the same way that the seagull's young must have, too late in the season and demanding unimaginable things. I spread the pages over the flowered spread of my twin bed, so unlike the pale white coverlets in Castine, and read words like trace and lips and undone. Embarrassed, I put the letters away in the bedside drawer where later my mother would discover them. She said she didn't read them, and I wouldn't care if she did. Around the edges of Lake Pontchartrain, where bleached oyster shells were heaped, the metallic breeze carried traces of brackish water, diesel fuel, rubber boots. I had turned 16, saved from being all too sweet, but still sweet enough. I thought about sailing alone and decided to sit on the shore and watch the shrimp trawlers head out, the dusk pink and violet and falling around them like the shellfish they'd soon catch. Leon was up north in that summer place where the sky was thinner, hued with blue-gray lines, and the sea carried the musk of gulls and lobster traps. For him, the summer place had become year-round. That autumn, he wrote his letters, describing in slanted lines how he stood on the bridge of the training ship, still moored, going nowhere until spring, and through field glasses, he looked out to the beach where we kissed, the gray house a smudge on the horizon. South. The official end of summer and school a month in, I arrived at a friend's birthday party, too early. And the boy hosting it opened his front door in cutoffs and bare feet. A boy from the cafeteria steps. A boy with hands that gestured and lips that curved. He smiled and invited me into a windowed room where the floor was wooden and covered with record albums. He asked me to choose one and put it on the stereo. He went to change into jeans, another shirt, and I chose blue. Joni's voice headed into the slow evening like smoke and envy and wishing. When he came back, I realized not only was I early, but that it was his birthday too. I had only one gift, but he said he didn't need anything, that my choice in music was enough. The days grew shorter, but our shadows never seemed to diminish. The birthday boy with hands and lips and approving nods in my direction, due south, walked under the eaves between classes and during classes, simply leaving the building in the middle of biology, his dissection kit untouched, his partner unfazed. He bent the rules and I wished I could do the same. I noticed him more and more and stared at him out the window of our geometry class. Mr. Trung chanted obtuse and isosceles in Vietnamese French intonations and seemed not to notice my inattention. Swimming and sailing on hold, Christmas crept in, and then came the debutantes and their dates. I thought of Leon, how strange this world would seem to him, how he was buried in maritime studies while I could barely fathom the inner life of a mollusk, the pearly inside so slippery and revealing. Did he count the days until summer? Did he counterweight the months by imagining his bed covered with more than a cotton sheet, a few wool blankets? Did he walk down to the shore now covered with snow and wonder where the baby gulls had flown? Thank you.
Thank you all. That was beautiful. I love being so close to the magic. So I have a couple questions for y'all, and then we will open it up to questions from the audience, so be thinking. I recently was reading Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake. It is completely unrelated to this, but I'm gonna pull it in. It's about fungi, the world of fungus and mushrooms and how it's all interconnected and how they build these like symbiotic relationships with other plants and animals and just can never seem to die. They just find a way. And as I'm reading this book the last couple of weeks, I start to realize that fungi is just like New Orleans. Whatever, it embeds itself in us, it entwines itself with the people and the land, and somehow it finds a way. So my question to each of y'all is, how did New Orleans become and entangle itself in your life, and how has that evolved? So I'm going to pass this down. I have a mic, and then Karin, you have a mic down on that end if we need it as well, because I'd love to hear from each of them.
So, I pretty much grew up here, and I left, when I went to college, thinking, that's it, I'm done with New Orleans, I'm done with the South, I'm now going to become a cosmopolitan person living in Iowa City. And imagining this whole life for myself beyond that, and then I ended up coming back here over 30 years ago and haven't left. So circumstance was one thing, but even when I was in Iowa, it's like New Orleans was so much a part of my imagination. It was like coming up in what I was writing. It happened in graduate school, and then coming back here. Just the longer I'm here, the more the mycelium of New Orleans takes hold in me. So whether it's like I may not be writing always. What you just heard had nothing directly to do with New Orleans, right? I mean, those zinnias seeds were like maybe the only thing. that really, happened here. But I could probably point to things in the longer pieces that I would say, yeah, that's New Orleans. That comes from my experience here, whether it's the history or just things about the culture, things about the particularity of everyday experience, like in Carolyn's poem, that you want to hold on to.
Oh, yeah.
Just that you want to hold on to because we live in a place that is so precarious.
Geez, for me, I think it's still in progress. I only moved here in July from Baton Rouge, and I was in New York before, and growing up in Florida. But I feel like it's taking hold of me very quickly. I've been made to feel very welcome here. I mean, the literary community here is very vibrant and very welcoming. And again, it does feel a lot like Florida, just the climate and having to deal with hurricanes, having to deal with climate change, having to deal with flooding, horrible politics, all of that is tragically familiar. But yeah, I don't know how much more I can say. I do love it here. I hope this is the last place I ever live, and I mean that sincerely. And yeah, we'll see. I don't know how long it'll take for me to be able to claim that I'm a Louisianan. Louisiana? Is that the proper?
Close enough.
Yeah, but I'm working on it, so you guys will let me know, I guess.
Thanks. I moved here in 2001 after finishing grad school in Tucson, Arizona. And I've lived a lot of places, New York and South Carolina and Alabama and Tennessee. And this was the place, I think, that my husband and I chose to move to, and that in and of itself relates some privilege, though we moved here with, I think, a lot of animals and not really much money, and it was a very different time. My husband was able to get a job at a nonprofit. I didn't have a job yet and was kind of patching things together. And then went up to UNO and literally walked up in the summer, and there was like a summer chair. Peter Schock, who was there at the time, who met with me, and I got an adjunct gig and have, stayed on, and now I'm an associate professor. So that's one part of it. So that, and I don't think I really had a sense of leaving a grad school in Arizona. I don't think I had a sense of what it meant to be a local poet, a local writer, and I had that kind of taught to me, and not in a nice way. I don't remember exactly what Michael Todd Edgerton said, but anybody who knows Michael Todd Edgerton knows that it probably wasn't nice. And he's a dear friend of mine. And I remember being like, he was like, well, you need to become involved in the local scene, and start to do things for writers here, And I was like, what, why? Like, what? I was young, I was stupid. And he was, he shook me up, and he was like, what are you talking about? This is your home now, and you have to give back to this place. And I don't think I fully understood that until, like a lot of people would say, Katrina, and coming back and just the whole being ripped out from under us, and watching other people that came back sort of build back the literary scene, maybe not build back, but the post-Berlin, right, a new scene, the old scene haunting it, and watching them and then sort of saying, well, okay, where can I try to lean my shoulder in? So I don't know, that doesn't really answer it as far as the poetry, but my experience here as a millennium.
So I'm originally from New York, and I left there when I was 18 for college and moved around a bunch after that. And I never really felt like I was gonna live anywhere. I thought I would just spend 2 years here, 2 years there, 2 years there. And then I did a summer residency here. It's now defunct, the New Orleans Writers Residency. I don't know if anyone is familiar, but they had 2 bedrooms and a shotgun, 3 beds in each room on Claiborne. So it was a little intense at times, and it was the middle of the summer. And so in that experience, I was like, oh, this is perfect. I should live here. So then I went to Wisconsin Wisconsin for a year, and I was like, this is terrible, I should not live here. And no offense to Wisconsin, but it was cold, it was not for me. And New Orleans feels kind of like the opposite. So my physical person is here because it feels like home, and then I feel like with the writing, I'm just now dipping my toe in playing with what it's like to write from New Orleans. I don't know yet how to really own my experience without feeling like I'm gonna, I don't know. I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Here, I'm gonna take that and put this back. Okay. Okay, now that I've held it. So I'm the New Orleanian that went away, but it's funny because I moved here in 1967 with my mom, my single mom. She got into grad school at Tulane. She got a master's in social work. And so I'm growing up in Charles Rosen House the first 2 years, 67 through 69. And Vietnam War is going on, and there's students that are, when my mom gets a job at the health center at Tulane, there's students coming in there that have been drafted. And they're like, I'm gonna cut my fingers off or my toes or whatever, I'm not going. And she was dealing with this. Meanwhile, I'm a little kid, and I'm just going to elementary school at Lusher, so. But in terms of like, I left here to go to college in upstate New York, and then I came right back. I transferred back to Newcomb. I'm like, that's not for me. It's cold in New York. I'm coming back. And the reason that I think I left in the first place was, well, I'm Thursday's child, has far to go. I had to travel. I had to go out and make some miles. And I lived all over the place. I lived in Germany, Norway, Alaska, Iowa City, which is, ironically, Brad and I are growing up here. We didn't meet until 1986. And I was born in 1959, so, you know. And he's still a little kid in Iowa City. But anyway, we met at the co-op in Iowa City instead of in our town. And I'm originally from Central Florida. I was born in Winter Park, Florida, but I figure I came up here. So, and I always feel like I'm back home when I come back home. But now I live in Columbus, Ohio, thanks to academia, because my husband, who also grew up in New Orleans, got a job at Ohio State, the Ohio State University. And so to quickly round this up, because I'm talking too long, I've been reading Siri Hustvedt, her book of essays that came out in the late 90s called Yonder, which is between here and there. She goes into this whole first section of that 45-page or so essay, and she's talking about this idea of yonder. And I feel like that's where I've been pretty much my whole life. But it's definitely like the here is probably New Orleans. The there is wherever I am at the time. For 30 years it's been Columbus, Ohio, but anyway. So when I write, I'm always coming back here. Always to New Orleans. So there are a lot of stories that I've written about that, and more. I've got a whole novel that's coming right back here too. I didn't mean to, but it was Highway 61, which starts in Grand Marais, Minnesota, and ends up on Tulane Avenue. So, anyway.
Do we have any questions?
I have one question, if you don't have any questions.
Most people who have attended an author talk or a panel or whoever thought about becoming a writer knows that pretty much the number one thing, and I've attended a lot of author talks in my job, the number one thing people will say if asked, what's your piece of advice, is write every day, write all the time, just write. So we all know that one. Now I'm gonna ask y'all, what's something, other than that, obviously, that has hindered your writing? It might not be a
repeating, maybe it was just a one-time deal, maybe it was when you first started out, maybe it was this morning. What's something that has stopped you from writing, and how did you move past it? Because we can all sit down at the desk with a pen and paper or a laptop, but sometimes.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Yikes, ask the scary question. That's a great one, though. I mean, for me, every single time, it's probably the same thing, which is just not believing I can do it. Which is ridiculous, since I've been doing it for such a long time, but really and truly, every single time when I sit down, it's, you know, whatever you want to call it, imposter syndrome, lack of self-confidence. Yeah, especially now that I'm moving into sort of the strange territory that's between poetry and fiction. I am writing some fiction, but Parasite Pilgrim is feeling very much like it's going to be like a hybrid project. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. But I think when you hear yourself saying, I don't know what I'm doing, the thing to do actually is to get really excited. Because when you don't know what you're doing, that's when you're going to do something really cool that you could not have known that you were going to do or that you're going to be able to do. So I know that's maybe not the most concrete answer to your question, but really and truly, it's like I don't know what I'm doing, I can't do this, I have to get past that every single time.
Geez. For me, at least when I was younger, it was just being scared. I thought that, you know, I knew that I was gonna write bad poems because I wasn't practicing or like putting any effort towards it, but I didn't want to write any bad poems, so I just kind of put myself in like this terrible spot. Because I didn't write as a kid or anything like that. I really learned how to write poems in college, and I was, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that I became a professor. I was such a bad student. And when I was starting what should have been my last semester of undergrad is when I had to kind of sit down with myself and say, well, you know, you're only writing in your workshop classes. Like, you're not writing during your breaks, you're not writing for yourself. So are you a poet, or are you just doing your homework? And because I had no plan, I didn't know what graduate school was even at the time. I had no aspirations. And all I knew was I didn't want to be a high school teacher. That was really the only thing I knew. So actually I had to, you know, and I did the very cliche thing. Was my New Year's resolution going into 2012 was to like get a notebook and write in it every day. And of course the first entry is like the last day of January, right? So it took a bit to get that going. But that's really what helped me, was just kind of being in the spot where I was just wasting my time in college. I had no goals, I had no aspirations, but my time in college was coming to an end, so I really had to like light a fire under my own ass and figure out what I was doing. But similar to Brad, you know, I still have those days where I'm just like, everything is terrible, I don't know what I'm doing. But I put, and this might be a little like lunatic, but I keep all of my books and all of like my magazines within eyesight of my desk. That way I can contradict myself. Like, they all stare back at me like, is that really true that you can't write anything? You've done it several times. And then I talk to myself a lot, so I'll be like, oh no, you're right, I can do this, I've done it before. So it kind of helps me to like reassure myself when I have those doubts, because they are often, they're often baseless, I think, but it's hard to realize that. So I quite literally like put my books in front of me, like, no, you can do it. You have reason to believe that you can do this again.
I guess when I get impeded is when I end a project, which appears like a book sometimes, or some parts of the project appear like a book. And after I'm done with it, I don't know, I hope nobody's an entomologist, because maybe this isn't true, but they're, you know, termites, this is what I read. The termites, in order to mate, they take their own feces and they create these little tiny like things that they can hide in, and then they mate inside of them. It's really odd. And I think of that as sort of like my writing process, as there's a period of taking the sort of little, building my feces dome, you know, and then I can live inside of it. There are bad days, there are good days with writing, but then I can live inside of it. So like, I worked on the long poem for 5 years, writing pretty much every day in one way or another. When it was over though, and it like was picked up, that was terrifying. It was like, okay, I mean, it was great, but it was also like, well, what now? Because I don't think in lyric poems, I think inside of a book or a project. And so now I'm sorry for this analogy, really I am now that I've given it, but I'll follow through. I am at the period of trying to, tack up little dung here and there. And so it becomes very mechanical. I sit down and I take all of the shorthand notes that I've left all over my car and my bags and my house, and sometimes on my body I write notes, and I just sit down like a little stenographer, secretary, and I just type everything up with no judgment. And then I end up having about 100 pages, and thus the dome begins, and I start working with them.
So first one is probably existing in capitalism. I never have the time really because I work a job. I'm a teacher, so I work all day, and then after work I'm very tired, and before work I'm very tired, and so like everyone always says like you have to find the time to write, and I really find time to be like very limited. So that's something that stopped me and has also made me, as a product of that, when I finished grad school, I did a bunch of residencies. I was at the Fine Arts Work Center for 7 months. I was in Wisconsin, as I said, and those are things where they pay you to write, so they pay you and they give you all this free time, and then under that, there's all this pressure, and I'm like, how do I spend this time? So it's double-sided. And then also just, being very sensitive to the world and like personally being very heartbroken about what's going on in Palestine, that has really been rough for me, and the solution for both of those, I now take different antidepressants.
So I have to thank everybody who's sitting next to me for being a teacher, because y'all are amazing. I'm not a teacher. I live off my husband. He's my main philanthropist, and I write. I have no excuse about not getting to my desk, except my dog, maybe. I mean, literally, I have no excuse. I don't have, and I feel guilty sometimes when I go to residencies that somebody like T should be going to, not me, because I could sit at my desk at home. But there is something about self-doubt and being in a community, whether it's a community that's like somebody you're going to email with or talk on the phone with, or at the Fine Arts Work Center, where you can take workshops, or you can at least talk to somebody else who's trying to do the same thing that you are. So I'd say, yeah, barricade self-doubt, getting past that community, big time. That's why I even bothered with an MFA, is for community, because I felt like I was so secluded. Anyway, so there's that.
See, hold on to the microphone. We've only got a few more minutes. We'll go back toward me. Tell us where we can find you next, what your next project is, what are we keeping our eye on for each of you?
Well, I kind of already said, I'm working on a novel that is, the structure is basically Highway 61. I started working I was stuck on a short story collection, and so I said, you need to get out of your own head. So I looked at Jessica Lange's photographs. I love her black and white photographs, the actress Jessica Lange, and photographer. And when I turned 60, whenever that was, a while ago, her book came out. So I started to write a paragraph per photograph. There are a lot of photographs. So eventually you end up in New Orleans, and there's a big section of the book that's photographs of New Orleans. And I started writing scenes, because I know what it's like to be here. And I couldn't stand doing a paragraph or a picture anymore. I had to bundle them and make sense of it. And all of a sudden I realized, oh, there's this character in my short story collection that I'm stuck on, who's now a middle-aged woman, and she's leaving her husband. So that's what that is about, and I'm still working on it, so we'll see what happens.
Well, you can find me. My website is tia-clark.com. This story right here that I read from is the last piece of the collection that I'm going to be trying to put out. So look for me in like 3 years, probably. And otherwise, I'm around. I do readings. I'm on Instagram, @Clark Big Time. That was part of the question, right? That's where you can find me, on the internet.
Thank you. I'm on the internet too. I'm a little surprised that I am sometimes, and because I have the flip phone and the computer hooked into the wall. But it's carolynhembree.com is my situation. And as far as what I'm working on now, I'm just, licking stick, just each one, and that's that. I have no idea. And my book's coming out in January. So excited about that.
Geez, you can find me here again tomorrow. I don't know. About translation. My website is also just my name. You can find me on Instagram. The festival has tagged me and stuff, so you can find my handle. But I have a book coming out next fall called All the Places We Love Have Been Left in Ruins, which again dealing a lot with climate change and growing up in Florida. And Christ, I think I have 4 translation books coming out next year. Just because, I couldn't land any of them, and then they all landed at the same time. So I'll be doing a lot of stuff next year. Yeah.
Very cool. bradmeshard.org, and I'm also too much on the internet. And Turned Earth, my next book will be coming out in 2025. And just to be super clear, since I was reading mostly from Parasite Pilgrim related stuff, Turned Earth is very much a New Orleans book, and it is very much like domestic realism, really, in a lot of ways. Lots about gardening, lots about my mom, and otherwise I can be found around town.
Well, thank each and every one of you for reading for us, for answering the questions, for being here for this amazing literary community, and thank every single one of you, because we obviously could not do it without you. So please give everybody on the panel a round of applause real quick.
All right, I think I speak for all the authors when I say they'll be happy to sign books after the talk. You can buy those outside from Tubby & Coo's Traveling Bookshop. We're also really excited that anyone who donated to support this panel today was automatically entered to win a $25 Community Book Center gift card. Community Book Center is next door. We're supporting not 1 but 2 local indies at this festival. And our winners, we drew 2 because we're feeling happy. This session are Shannon Russell. Shannon? Anybody here need Shannon Russell? It's really...
I know where she is. She's in Daphne, Alabama.
All right.
She didn't make me.
Well, thanks, Shannon. And Cindy Luster. Is there a Cindy Luster in the house? No Cindy Luster either. All right. We'll do more at other sessions. It'll be awesome. And last but not least, I'd like to thank poets and writers for their generous support of this panel. Thank you to all of you. Raina, you killed it. Thank you. Thank you.